This is the simplest effective overhead motion. Now you might think, Coach, that doesn't look so simple, but I promise you can learn to feel this. So first, we're going to help you feel this shoulder release action, and then we're going to help you build that into a full serve. So what we are doing here is we are connecting this shoulder rolling action onto the end of an upward throwing motion. So here's some tips to how to find that. 90-90 preparation. So when I say 90-90, I mean this angle, roughly 90, this angle, roughly 90. Now, that's not a hard and fast rule, but this should feel the most comfortable as you twist around. What we are trying to feel is the shoulder feel like combination of stable and loose. Now, I know that sounds like a little bit of a contradiction, but really it's most of the, the soft tissue in the front here. Relaxed, relaxed, relaxed. And the back and the muscles around the back hold that arm down and back. So a lot of times the way you can find this 90-90 position is to use your back to kind of lock your elbow in, but then wiggle this, because you want this stuff nice, relaxed, and ready to roll while your back stabilizes that motion. Now, specifically, I want to talk about the chest. The pressing action on the serve and on the overhead is not nearly as far into the motion as it is on something like the forehand. So if we watch Alexa's motion here, you'll notice, the elbow's still pretty darn close to the torso. The chest stretches and activates up until like here, and then we load all of the energy into that shoulder. So that's what we're trying to feel on the end of this motion. We are trying to feel all the energy from here end up in the shoulder rolling here. The reason that I recommend you try to find your effortless shoulder whip release from the service line is this is fundamentally a downward motion that we are going to connect to an upward throwing motion, but because this snaps over down, you're going to feel more comfortable here. If you try to find this and work this from the baseline, you might hit the net a lot, you might even hit the ground on motions that are really pretty darn good. If you are already comfortable with the idea of throwing, then that sensation is extremely useful on the serve. Almost every throwing action sport, releases a little bit differently. And in tennis, we are looking for that shoulder over release. But all of this early cocking and driving is going to feel very similar to a volleyball serve or a pitch or a football throw, all sorts of throwing stuff that you do. Now, if you throw straight, it's probably going to look something like this. Of course, we have to get it over the net in tennis, and so what we have to do is throw up. Now, it's still a throw. You're still accelerating with a similar kinetic chain, but you're going to throw up and then let your shoulder finish that swing. So you see the difference? So if I purely try to pitch this, it's even though I have the velocity, I have the shoulder whip, it's very difficult to get net clearance. So all we have to do to make sure that throwing action connects onto a tennis usable stroke is change it to an upward throw. Just like with every shot in tennis, there is a spacing element, and if you don't have the right spacing between your body and the ball, things will get a lot more discombobulated. So let's watch, what a good one looks like here. Right here is the area, relative to her body, where that shoulder is super comfortably coming through the air. There's a lot of other places you can try to intercept it, and it's just not going to feel great. So do one, too close or too low. So you'll notice all the velocity was gone, even though she tried to do the same thing. So a lot of your exploration when you're trying to discover your simplest effective forehand is tossing the ball at different places, maybe leaning in slightly different ways, and figuring out for my arm, for my shoulder, where exactly does this rolling action come through the air? Because if I don't set this spacing up, well then of course the rolling action is not going to feel comfortable. Whatever you end up doing to compensate is probably not going to feel great. Now, there's one more little trick I want to talk about, and it is to pull your arm back at the top here to create this whip. Now, most great servers do this intuitively. They do it without thinking. And so, it is very possible this cue will not help you, and you'll simply just feel it out until you get one with really good whip, and you're like, I'm going to swing that way because that's how I got the best whip. But for some people, if they are stuck in this kind of a pressing overhead motion, if they just imagine using the back to hold the shoulder back at the top, all of a sudden, that whips through a lot more. Now, when we watch Alexa do it, we can see the momentum of the arm, the momentum of this part of the arm stops going forward and rolls in place. That is because of a backward force exerted to create that whip. Again, if this cue, if it makes you feel tight or discombobulated, just discard it. When you watch your serve or when you do your serve, if you feel a lot of this, if you feel a lot of like, it's not whipping, I'm just pushing it, those are the players where if you pull it back on purpose, even if you do exaggerate it a little, it might unlock that feeling for the first time, and then you can index into it more intuitively as you move forward. Now, related to this, I want to talk about the toss, but now from this view. So remember how we just talked about how you almost pull it back to get it to snap over. If you toss too far in front of you, often you'll find yourself reaching for it, and you won't be able to get that, snap back whipping action. You see the difference there? So, a lot of times, it's tricky because it's like, well, no, I'm not getting that snap action. Maybe it's because you're not doing the right thing, or maybe it's the ball is just here. So you have to reach for it. And if you toss slightly farther this way, it'll work. Now, on the other extreme, if we look, let's imagine this is the baseline here. Most people are comfortable with tosses somewhere out here. If you toss it behind the baseline, now like even that early upward throwing motion doesn't really have enough space to launch the shoulder into that final action. So you can also jam yourself up this way. So, this depth is just as important as the lateral spacing. It's also something you have to discover. Last thing I want to talk about here is, when Alexa hits her serve, she uses, roughly this degree of, vertical forward lean. And a lot of players are in this range. Some players really like to lean in. Some players like more be straight up. And your toss is going to depend on how much you like to lean forward. So you can experiment with all of that, understanding that they're connected. There is no right toss. There is no right amount of lean. They just have to match for your body, your limb length, the way your shoulder fires through. Try to feel it, benchmark it by, can my shoulder get that whipping release action?
If you're looking at this and thinking, okay, that all makes sense, but which one is it for me? Is my shoulder jammed? Is it not whipping? Is it not going? Am I not getting my upward vector? Well, we can help. We do personalized online coaching. So we go back and forth with you, working on your strokes, helping you practice. And if you happen to be in New Jersey, we can get on court with you and run these same progressions with you in person.
Now, there are a couple things you can do in here that will accidentally mess up your ability of your shoulder to roll. And one of them is engaging the traps up here when you try to reach up for the serve. So if we watch the serve here, the way it's supposed to be, if you watch the arm. So that arm stays roughly in this line throughout. Now, when you're hitting an overhead, you want to reach up, right? Because your mind is like the ball's up there. If you use this to reach up, so you tighten your shoulder against your head, that is going to break the efficiency of your shoulder. And again, as you watch this, you'll probably recognize a lot of this kind of emotion in your own serve. And similar to what we said last time, the key is, in order to deload this, you use your back to pull the shoulder back and down, and you trust it. So you can reach up with your trunk, but you trust your shoulder. Don't feel like you have to push it up to the ball. Trust it, hold it back there, and it will roll. Now, the term snap your wrist gets thrown out a lot, but there is a difference between the shoulder rolling through and the wrist rolling through. And on the serve, the wrist really doesn't do a whole lot. And if you find yourself using your wrist, if you find yourself trying to snap over with your wrist like that, it probably means that you are jamming yourself with one of the things we talked about before. So go ahead and do it for real for me. And what I want you to notice is Alexa's wrist, it really only flexes as part of the follow through to decelerate the racket effortlessly. But almost all of the velocity of the serve is created at the shoulder. Now, for building that, throw and release action onto the full serve, there's a lot of things we can do with the rest of the body. And one of them is with the left arm. So if we watch Alexa serve here, one of the things that I want you to notice is that the left arm is not just a passive toss the ball and do nothing. It actually helps you stretch the front side of your trunk, leading to a more upward explosion, which is going to give you some net clearance. Now, what can happen when you do this is, remember that the serve's efficiency is created by that simplest effective motion. So if you go, okay, well now I'm gonna stretch, I'm gonna get up into the air, but then you don't actually time it with this, it's gonna make your serve worse, not better. So one of the biggest pieces to serving development is to make sure that everything you add, either for more net clearance or for more velocity, connects with this action seamlessly. And things are going to change the timing, right? So like if I stretch here and I successfully unwind that, hypothetically, my shoulder should come through a little faster if that energy gets there. So I'll have to wait a split second longer. And other things, right? If it makes me go up more, well, then my contact point might be slightly differently. So everything we talk about here that's going to help you build into the serve is subordinate to this. And if that sounds familiar, that's exactly how we talk about the forehand. Every time we add velocity, direction, it's all subordinate to our efficient contact motion. Now, our second stretch is back here. On your serve, imagine throwing your chest at the sky. Now, not everybody can do this. Some people don't feel like they have the back mobility. So like I said, we're going to go through 3 different stretches you can use to help get yourself more net clearance. But if you can do this, this is one of the best levers you have. So if we watch Alexa serve, this is something that she's always used a lot. And so see how the shoulder is coming through the same way as our simplest effective overhead. But the trunk, we've got that little bit of extension in the back, and that chest is to the sky as that shoulder is releasing. Now, you don't have to keep your chest at the sky. You can let yourself roll over. But that first explosive upwards motion, throw your chest up to the sky. What that's going to do, again, is it's going to give you confidence in your net clearance so you can trust holding your shoulder back here and you're not tempted to move it and press it up. So let's talk a little more about the left arm. This gives you leverage here. And obviously this is a big part of what coordinates and powers your ultimate shoulder action. So, one of the things with the left arm is its left-right orientation after you serve. So if we watch Alexa serve, and we watch the position of her left arm when she cocks for that serve. Now, her arm is about as far to the left as really works for the serve. More open than that in your prep, and you're going to have a hard time coordinating that serve. But many players prefer even a more exaggerated left arm across the body, more like how you would set for a throw. What's important is one of the degrees of freedom you can play with is how much you feel like stretching back here by pulling your arm this way. If that energy gets into your shoulder, that might be something to experiment with working on the full serve. Lastly, we are going to talk about the legs. And this might seem controversial, but forget about your legs unless you already have a very good serve. So let's watch like Alexa's just regular motion. And if you watch her knees, you are going to see that, yes, there was a little bit of knee flexion there. The quads, the hamstrings, right? They did participate a little in that power generation process. However, most of the time, when we see people thinking about the legs, we see things that look more like this. So one of the things is the unnecessarily deep knee bend. So go ahead and let's see what that looks like. Now, you'll notice her serve was slower and less controlled. Now, that's not necessarily because the amount she bent her knees there was wrong, but it's because she's thinking about bending her knees instead of about coordinating that whip through the ball. And so this is kind of the problem with all of these leg-driven cues. Again, unless you already have a very, very good serve, almost definitely these kinds of cues are going to make your serve worse, not better, because what really matters is your simplest effective shoulder whip and connecting that to the ball. Okay, another thing we see is people getting stuck down there. So they bend really early and then they kind of stop down there and then they have to like shoot up with a very strange staccato timing. Again, slower, despite the fact that she did, in physical reality, she pushed up from her legs there. But that energy didn't get up through her body, into her shoulder. So the energy from the legs isn't getting into the racket. And not only is it not getting into the racket, it's actually making that motion less coordinated and harder to control. So go back and hit a couple more regular serves. The amount of legs that you should use before you know, if you have an amazing serve already and you're trying to get another 10%, you can start thinking about the legs. But the amount of legs you should use while you're developing your serve is the amount that happens naturally when you're trying to coordinate your upper body, and that is it. Now, if she wants to, you know, try to throw harder or try to stretch more, maybe subconsciously she uses her legs more, but, you know, that serve was produced with a very small amount of knee flexion. So keep your attention on your simplest motion, feeling that release and intercepting the ball with it, and forget about the legs unless you have a very good serve already.